Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. I'm at the Frisco Discovery Center in Frisco, Texas, which is north of Dallas, which is home to the National Video Game Museum. Awesome place with tons of rarities and cool displays. Very nostalgic. Let's go inside and check it out. Haven't been here in a couple of years, so I'm really excited to check it out, see the new additions and the rarities and awesome stuff. Private event. The museum is closed to the public today because there's a Dallas Retro Gamers meetup, but we're going to check out all the museum exhibits. So grab you some popcorn, settle in, have a good time. Battleborn. Thorn from Battleborn, that's new. That wasn't here last time. Extremely cool statue. And the Wall-O consoles. This is a very impressive exhibit as you walk in. Kind of sets the tone, sets the stage for the adventures to come. And I really like how the museum is set up in stages, kind of like a video game. And we'll walk through the stages in order. There's another statue that wasn't here. Miko from Battleborn. I remember my good buddy Curtis liked Battleborn. May he rest in peace. Arendi. Very nice. Now there's the gift shop. We'll check that out at the end of the tour. And let's go in. Stage one, where it all began. Now parts of this museum are interactive, but there are definitely places that are blocked off where you can see all these cool artifacts, but do not touch, and that makes perfect sense. This stuff is old, this stuff is fragile, and these are obvious museum piece qualities. Check out this TV tennis up here at the top. I actually had this back in the day. It's not a video game, it's kind of a sort of an electromechanical device, but it's definitely Pong, and some friends gave me that. Dr. Pong, extremely rare, Puppy Pong, and they've got little cards in front of each one. Reading the history, you can pause the screen if you want to check that out, get more info. And the original Pong, 1972, the first commercially successful arcade video game. And there's the Magnavox Odyssey, created by the late great Ralph Baer. Began as the brown box prototype, and ultimately it came to market in 1972 as the Magnavox Odyssey. And you can check out the Odyssey games were really interesting. They had board game-like pieces and screen overlays, and it was a very interactive, tangible video game system, and very primitive, but very cutting edge in 1972. And wow, that's where it all began, the first home console. And you've got some great plug-and-plays here, including the Coleco Telstar. And Odyssey branched off into some plug and plays like the Odyssey 3000, or 300 I should say. Check out the Olympian 2600. That was not one I was familiar with. Stunt Cycle, I actually found one of those at a garage sale one time. I do have the Bentley CompuVision. That's one of the more common Pong clones. Telstar Combat is another one I found at a garage sale back in the day, but I actually sold mine on eBay. Kind of regretting that one. Really cool. It's basically like Combat for the 2600. Very nice. It's always cool to see. There were over 100 Pong clones back in the day. Everybody was copying Atari's very successful Pong formula and the Magnavox Odyssey's Pong formula. I mean, Pong was basically a copycat of the Magnavox Odyssey, and then when Pong took off, every company seemingly wanted to make a Pong type game. Incredibly cool. Now, speaking of early arcade history, Computer Space, that was actually the first arcade video game, 1971. You have seen these likely in some older feature films. Incredibly cool. And what we have here is the world's largest Pong. You can play this, it's interactive. It's got these giant rotary knobs, and it is a lot of fun. It actually plays extremely well. It's not just a gimmick, it's a very fun game. And speaking of the brown box prototype, here is one. You can check out some history there if you want to pause the screen. Let's move on to, so that's stage one. And stage two over here is the timeline. Now as you enter, you've got this great montage of some of the most iconic video game characters in the history of the universe. Now, if I were to pick a Mount Rushmore of video game characters, you guys I love doing the Mount Rushmore videos. It would have to be Mario, Pac-Man, Sonic, and the fourth one would be tough. Would it be Donkey Kong? Would it be Lara Croft? You guys let me know in the comments. Mario, Sonic, Pac-Man, and who else? Or maybe you have a different list. Now as you go over here, you see a very nicely done timeline beginning with the Odyssey. A lot of second gen stuff, including the Adventure Vision, extremely rare tabletop console. They only made 4 games for that, and they were all rendered in red. Man, a friend of mine has an Adventure Vision, but I do not. Wish I did. And below here, you've got the Fairchild Channel F System 2. Now, the first iteration, the sound actually came out of the speaker on the system itself. The System 2, they wised up and the sound came out of the TV set. My 2 best friends growing up back in 1976 each had a Fairchild Channel F. There's Coleco's Telstar Arcade, really interesting system with triangular cartridges. And the Microvision, 1979, the first handheld game system with interchangeable cartridges, a decade before the Game Boy. NES Game Boy, you guys don't need me to talk about that. You know everything about that. TurboGrafx 16, awesome. Came out the same year as the Game Boy. Just a revolutionary system. Same year as the Genesis. Revolutionary in the sense that it was an amazing console, but unrevolutionary because it did not do incredibly well in the marketplace. It was trounced by the Genesis and Super Nintendo, unfortunately. Speaking of trounce, the Jaguar, the Apple Pippin, my Virtual Boy I got at a thrift store, and it came boxed with like 9 cartridges inside, and it was like, I don't know, $15 or something like that. And there's history of the National Video Game Museum. There's Sean Kelly, Joe Santulli, 2 of the founders along with John Hardy. Some handheld action here. And up above, more consoles. Oh guys, the Odyssey 2, oh my gosh, I could talk about that system forever, love it. My cousin had one back in the day in Arkansas and we would play it for hours. The Gamecom had a stylus well before the DS. The PS2, the fatty as some people call it, since they'd come up with a slimline version later, and then all the way up to today's players, as it says, today's consoles. Pretty cool stuff. So this is stage 2. Let's move on to stage 3. And stage 3 focuses on third-party games and on things like development kits and prototypes. Now, a lot of people that come into the National Video Game Museum are looking for Pac-Man and Mario and that kind of thing, but a lot of the hardcore gamers really like to see dev kits and some of the rarer stuff. And yeah, this stuff is always really neat to see. Tools of the trade, as they call them. Very cool. And check out this Xbox signed by Bill Gates. At Heritage Auctions, they auction off dev kits periodically. These go for thousands and thousands of dollars. Very rare, very cool that they've got them here preserved at National Video Game Museum where people can just come in and check them out. And the museum does subsist on donations and entrance fees and everything. Very reasonable. If you're ever in North Texas, definitely go to the National Video Game Museum. On my channel, I did a video on one-on-one featuring Julius Erving and Larry Bird. Julius, Dr. J, is my favorite athlete of all time. Cool stuff here. And over here to Activision, probably the greatest third-party company of the second generation of consoles. That kind of goes without saying. They just did such incredible games. And I hope you guys will let me know in the comments what your favorite Activision game is. Mine's probably a tie between Kaboom and River Raid. So incredible. Rock and Bolt. That's cool, but that's a flashback. As much of the stuff in this museum obviously is. Extremely cool. Love the packaging for these old computer games. How many of you guys remember the StarPath Supercharger? Really cool device for the 2600 that you could plug in, and you needed a cassette player to play advanced games on the 2600. Much more obscure, these reusable cartridges for home computer or video game machines. You can read about them there if you want to pause the screen. Really cool stuff. The Coleco Gemini that played Atari 2600 games. Super Sketch, one of the very rarest items for the ColecoVision, incredibly scarce. I've only seen a couple before, including this boxed example. That's amazing. Loved, had that to my collection, maybe someday. The first homebrew for the ColecoVision was Keptris, a Tetris clone, and the first Atari 2600 homebrew game was Tetris clone. Extremely cool to see these here preserved, and kids today can learn about the entire history of video games here at the National Video Game Museum. They do a great job of laying everything out. Mythicon, some of the more rare and really bad Atari 2600 games. A lot of people call Firefly in particular one of the worst video games of all time. Incredibly cool stuff, guys. We did not grow up with a computer in the house, but of course I remember Zork. I remember hearing about it and my friends playing it, and just amazing. Some of the packaging back in the day, just so freaking cool. Infocom, very famous computer company, awesome stuff. Such a great variety of gaming history here. But guys, we have only just begun, as they say. Let's go to stage 4. Stage 4 focuses on controllers, and they have got some fantastic boxed examples over here. Now, not all the controllers are fantastic. A lot of them are really bad, the gimmicky ones, but man, they make for awesome display items. And they've got some of the obscure ones along with the iconic ones like the Power Glove. It's so bad, and yes, it is bad, but it's awesome. Arkanoid, one of my favorite secondary controllers of all time. The Voss controls the Voss ship there, and it's just such a great rotary controller. Unfortunately, it was only compatible with Arkanoid. It wasn't compatible with any other NES game. I had a blast playing the Power Pad back in the day. I know you could cheat just by slapping your hands on it, but it was so much more fun just to jog and really get a good workout in. Love the Super Action controllers, which I do have a box set of those, so that's nice. And U-Force, again, infamous for being a terrible controller, but awesome to have for your collection. And again, they do have interactive exhibits here, which is freaking cool. Let's go on to stage 5. Stage 5 focuses on handhelds. Let's go inside here. And once again, they've got just a ridiculous amount of boxed items, including Mattel Electronics Basketball. That was my first handheld that I owned, that was mine. And my brother's was football from Mattel. And in the wake of Mattel creating these, a lot of companies started creating handheld and tabletop video games. I remember Wildfire was really popular. Tommytronic Tron, man, say that 3 times fast. Tommytronic Tron. Anyway, would love to have that one. So cool. Master Merlin. Now, I had the original red Merlin, but I never had the Master Merlin. That was much less common back in the day. Wow. Turtles, Super Cobra. Really great arcade ports, at least relative to the format. Rocket Pinball. That's a scarce one. Crazy Climber. Cool stuff. I've got the Coleco, or I've got one tabletop Zaxxon game, but it's definitely not that one. I can't remember who put it out. Spiders, another arcade port. They made a version of Spiders on the Arcadia 2001. Little history for you if you want to pause the screen. More tabletops and handhelds down here. So many freaking arcade ports. A lot of these I'm sure you guys are seeing for the first time. Ooh, there's the Zaxxon I have back there. That big boxed one there. Mine is not in the box, but it is awesome. I bought it at a comic book convention, and I was able to get it really cheap because it didn't sell and they were just wanting to get rid of it. Super Kong, that looks cool. Of course, who doesn't love Cubert? Now, these were extremely popular back in the day, these from Coleco, and they sell for quite a bit now. A boxed one, gosh, in really excellent condition, no telling, probably over $200, but you can get, maybe more, I don't know, but you can get just a, tabletop, nice condition for probably about 80, 90 bucks. Good working order. Raise the Devil, that looks so cool. Little pinball action there. Intex just did a ton of handhelds back in the day. There's the original Merlin. That's the one I owned. Awesome. Space Invader. That's a fun one. And yeah, they've got some interactive handhelds here. Very cool. I've got that Pac-Man too. It's really great. Really good version of Pac-Man. And the Game Boy stuff, which you guys are all very familiar with. During the early 90s, my wife and I were Game Gear people, but I love the Game Boy as well. It's got an incredible library, and I really fell in love with the Game Boy when the Super Game Boy came out, and I could play on my TV set through the ColecoVision, or the ColecoVision, I got ColecoVision on the brain, through the Super Nintendo. E-reader. Now, what a weird idea for a game console or a peripheral. You plugged it into your Game Boy Advance and you ran these e-reader cards to download your game into the system, and it was just so pointless and tedious. Can't imagine anybody but a really bored kid would get any kick out of that. I mean, it's just much easier just to play the game. Instead of opening these cards and dealing with all that, just, plug in the cartridge and play the game. Seemed completely pointless to me. There it is, my beloved Super Game Boy. Well, not mine, that copy, but anyway, love me some Game Boy. I did have this Micro at one point, but I sold it on eBay. I'm not a Game Boy completist, so I didn't figure I needed it. Engage, kind of an infamous gaming platform. I know some people trying to put a complete set together. Atari Lynx, I got mine on eBay years ago for 90 bucks. That came with some games. Gamecom, got mine at KB Toys on clearance, really cheap. Nomad, plays Genesis games on the go, which is pretty awesome. Oh my gosh, Game & Watches. It's so strange. Now, I've told you guys this before, but for whatever reason, I was unaware of Game & Watches in the early 80s. They just didn't register with me, even though I went video game shopping all the time and loved me some console collecting and all of that, and even collected handhelds. Game & Watches just weren't on my radar. No kids I knew had them. I don't remember anybody bringing them to school. And I just don't even remember seeing them in the aisles, which is really strange. Neo Geo Pocket Color, one of my great regrets is not picking up that system on a blister pack with 3 games for 60 bucks, an Incredible Universe. For some reason, I just didn't snag it. Definitely wish I would have. I still don't have that system in my collection. All right, guys, let's go to the next stage. Stage 6 is really fascinating because it talks about the great video game crash of 1983, as a lot of people called it colloquially, but it was a big downturn in the market, and in North America at least, for home consoles. And they've actually got a little store mock-up here in the corner, and it's really funny. People will sometimes bring these games to the gift shop registered and try to buy them, but it's just a mock-up, sort of a representative example of how at KB Toys, Toys R Us, and Circus World, and all kinds of stores, they would have bins of games selling for pennies on the dollar. The lowest I ever saw video games for sale back in the day were 99 cents a piece for Atari 2600, ColecoVision, and Television. I've heard tale of games going for as low as a quarter a piece, but I never saw those. But I definitely saw and took advantage of a lot of games being marked down to nothing. But this is really cool. Just kind of shows a little mock-up of a display case of a video game store back in the day. Pretty cool. Do you guys remember seeing the Atari kiosk back in the day where you could actually play the games and they would have them on display and you could just walk up and hang out, and like if you were at Sears or in the mall or whatever and your parents were shopping, you could just go play a bunch of Atari games. It was pretty awesome. These are pretty rare and highly sought after today, especially working and fully equipped. Pretty awesome. One of the main reasons for the video game crash was the rise of home computers, and home consoles did try to get in on the computer market by having keyboard attachments and computers and things, but most of them were a big failure or didn't even come to market at all. Some of the prominent examples include like the Atom computer, and check it out, the Atari 7800 keyboard, ultra rare, awesome. Now, this leads us to stage 7, computers. As you guys can see, they have got a lot of home computers here set up to play, which is awesome. It's one of the great things about this museum. It's extremely interactive. Yes, they have small, high dollar things under glass, and they've got the really rarest of the rare under glass, but you can definitely play a lot of games at the National Video Game Museum, including Munchman. That was a really fun Pac-Man clone for the TI-99 and the Commodore 64. To this day, the Commodore 64 is the highest selling, the most ubiquitous computer in the history of the world as far as a specific iteration of a home computer. The Commodore 64 is, to this day, it's the highest selling computer of all time. Some Nintendo games you don't see every day, for sure. The VIC-20, very popular computer as well, from Commodore. Tommy Tutor, really rare. I found a few cartridges, 3 cartridges for this computer years ago, but I never found a system, you know, just out in the wild. So I ended up selling those cartridges. That was many years ago when you could find retro gaming stuff just about every time you went out to pawn shops, thrift stores, garage sales, and the like. I just recently picked up the Intellivision computer module at a movie trading company for $100. It was marked down in half, which is pretty awesome. Video Brain family computer, really rare stuff. Stage 8 focuses on game creation, which is pretty awesome. Got some more interactive areas over here. The National Video Game Museum rotates out collections pretty frequently. You know, periodically they'll have new collections in. So stages 9, 10, and 11 They're not marked right now, but they do have some incredible exhibitions, including Native American representation in video games. Really cool. Never seen anything like this in any kind of museum as far as video games go. Really cool. Now, Wampum for the NES has some unfortunate stereotypes, but that's just, you know, the history of the industry. That's how it went. You know, obviously, social mores were much different then, but it's really cool that they have this here. What a great idea. And there have obviously been quite a few Native Americans in video games through the years. Custer's Revenge, very unfortunate representation of Native Americans there. But if you want a little history here, you can pause on that screen. But really cool. And when I say quite a few Native Americans represented in video games, obviously not enough, and it's all relative, but it's cool that they have these on display here. Of course, Westerns are gonna involve Native Americans. You guys like the Genesis or Super Nintendo version of Shadowrun better? Let me know in the comments. Very cool. Another interactive section here is virtual reality, which is great, beginning with the Virtual Boy and early arcade games like Battlezone that were very immersive, Sega VR, 3D gaming. I love my Sega 3D glasses. If you guys have ever played Zaxxon 3D and some of those games on that system, it is awesome. I was lucky with my Sega 3D glasses. I got them in a group lot off eBay, and they didn't have Sega 3D glasses listed on the title, so caught them slipping and got a cheap boxed Master System with a bunch of games and the Sega 3D glasses. Pretty cool. One of the newer exhibits here at the museum is Pokémon, and this is incredible. I'll probably do a full video on this exhibit, but just give you guys a look at it here. These games are common, these titles here for the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and DS, but man, they always go for a lot on eBay and through auction houses because they're just so dang popular and highly sought after. So cool to see the Pokemon theme all in one place here. So many different collectibles. And again, bite-sized information and history, just enough where it doesn't load you too much down as you walk through, and just enjoy seeing the exhibits, get a little history as you go. Pokemon trading card game, sort of loosely related to the video games. Something I've never gotten into is trading card games. I went to a trading card convention in Houston for work, and I definitely felt like a fish out of water, but it was kind of interesting to see everything that was available and the different vendors and everything. Moving on. Stage 12, Unplugged, focuses on board games that are video game related. Some of these are common and some of these are incredibly rare. Invader is definitely one you don't see. Blueprint, one of the more obscure video games to make it into a board game. That's crazy. How many of you guys have seen this F-Zero before? Did you even know that was a thing? Turbo, that was a great Sega game back in the day with incredible graphics, as was Pole Position as far as graphics go. Two great racers. These were in competition in the arcades, and ColecoVision owners got Turbo and Atari 5200 owners got Pole Position, and there was a lot of playground arguments over which game was better back in the day. I've got a little board game collection myself, and I'm proud of it, although I don't have any of these Intex ones. Very cool. I do have that little Pac-Man card game. They got some laid out here for you to see. See them in action, including Legend of Zelda. They don't have the Super Mario Brothers board game, I've noticed. That one is really hard to find. I've actually played this Pac-Man game. I own it, and family played it a couple times, and it was kind of fun. I like them mostly for the box art more than playing them. Let's go on to stage 13. And just among sort of the general public, two of the most popular stations in the National Video Game Museum is stage 13 and 14. 13 shows like a 70s style living room, complete with the wood paneling and the old-fashioned couch and a television set up that you can play. And an old VCR top loader. And right across from that is stage 14, the Sanctuary, sort of a 80s style bedroom where you can play some NES. Now, when the NES came out, video games became more and more. Prior to that, most video game systems were in living rooms, but more and more with the NES, with individual experiences like Metroid and Legend of Zelda, games migrated to bedrooms. Pretty cool, but yeah, the museum owners tell me that these are two of the most popular exhibits in this and the most commented upon. Stage 15, Respect, currently has Keith Robinson, the legendary Intellivision figurehead and programmer, and previously they had Ralph Baer, which is a great way to pay homage to Keith Robinson. There's a little info about cube art there, and if you Google Keith Robinson, you can learn all about him and what a major figure he was back in the day. Now, I met Keith a couple of times, and a really cool guy, really interesting, and kind of had the Santa Claus look going. Yeah, really iconic figure in second generation of consoles. Stage 16, called Bonus, is right outside of the arcade. They've got some really killer statues here, in addition to some coin-op games. And they've got some rare posters on the wall, which really look cool. Love to decorate my game room with these. These are very hard to find. I like that they have them framed. They look very nice on display. These are promotional posters as well as retail posters. Atari Home Computer Demonstration Center. You see that one even less often than the Atari 2600 version. Really cool stuff. Now guys, without further ado, let's check out Pixel Dreams, Stage 17, the arcade. They've got the high score champions here. Now I had my name on here a while back for Space Invaders, and they took Space Invaders out. They've got an excellent, very carefully curated selection of arcade games, including Sunset Riders. Love that one. It's sort of like Contra in the Old West. Pac-Mania is amazing. The first time I played that, I didn't realize you could jump. So it was a really hard game when I played it on the NES back in the day, but then I discovered that you can jump, and I'm like, holy cow, that's a game changer for sure. Played it the first couple of times, wasn't jumping. Very difficult. Speaking of difficult, Spy Hunter, video pinball, awesome. No arcade is complete without Donkey Kong, of course. And there's, hey, Space Invaders is back. Maybe I could get my name back up on the board. Tapper, love it. And shockingly, the Atari 2600 port, I think, is better than the ColecoVision one. Love the arcade version. Really interesting action title. I don't know why Donkey Kong Jr. is not by Donkey Kong, but hey, who am I to say? Doesn't matter. It's in the arcade, and that is awesome. And they take incredibly well care of their machines. These things get played like crazy with school groups and church groups coming up, a lot of kids playing. And I remember I was here previously and actually showed some kids how to put the token in and push the button. They didn't really know how to do it. You know, this is alien to a lot of kids. Junior Pac-Man, love that. It's a great port on the 2600. And as I've told you guys many times, Centipede, my wife's favorite arcade game of all time. Love me some Super Breakout, of course, and the Atari 2600 port is magnificent. Tron, enough said. Gorf, I first played that at Treasure City back in the day, and I was blown away. Thought, hey, some of this is like Space Invaders, which was confusing, but still amazing. Loved it. Mappy, really interesting arcade cab. It's very tall, beautiful arcade cab. And going over here, Robotron 2084, one of the greatest arcade games of all time, of course. Asteroids Deluxe. When I played Asteroids back in the day, I mastered it, and I was so happy when they came out with Asteroids Deluxe because it's a harder machine, whole new challenge. Gotta love Defender, of course, and then Missile Command, two of the most hardcore shooters of all time. Moon Patrol, a great side scroller, one of the really early parallax scrolling arcade games where there's images moving in different directions in the background. Atari Star Wars is definitely a favorite among retro gamers, as is Dig Dug, and one of my favorites, Dig Dug. Every arcade needs mixed Pac-Man, of course. Elevator Action has a really good port on the NES. Awesome stuff. And look, they've got little prizes over here. They're just for display. Pretty cool though. Rampage, the brainchild of Brian F. Collin. Road Blasters. I was really glad when I got my Genesis version because, man, the arcade game sucked up so many quarters. Baby Pac-Man, one of my favorites of all time. As I've told you guys, it's a terrible maze game, a terrible pinball machine, but you put them together and it's amazing. Love this game. And Pac-Man and Galaxian, of course, and Punch-Out. Nice. Let's go around. We're just about through with the arcade, then we'll check out the gift shop. But then, guys, we're gonna go back in the museum and we're gonna check out some other displays that weren't necessarily part of the whole stage setup. Little Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. All right, guys, let's check out the gift shop. And after going through the museum and whetting your appetite for video game greatness, you can buy some video game books. My books have been for sale here before, but they are currently out of stock. I need to bring some up and sell to John. Just haven't done that in a while. And they've got hats and keychains and all kinds of fun stuff. And of course, plushies. If you've ever seen any of the Pink Gorilla setups at video game conventions or been to their store, you know that plushies are very popular. And you got some homebrews over here, which is awesome.
Look at this keychain.
Including Sean Kelly's multi-cart, which I just recently picked up. And some of the new games for the Atari 2600 from Audacity Games. Count Vecula. Some great homebrews on the Vectrex. Yeah, glad to see that they actually have video games for sale here in the gift shop, along with t-shirts and all that kind of good stuff. Nice. All right, guys, we're going to go back in the museum and check out some more displays. Got a wall of extremely rare t-shirts. A lot of them are very rare anyway. Bet you rarely see anybody walking around wearing these bad boys. Love that Lock and Chase t-shirt. Man, if I had that, I would be very tempted just to wear it. Wear it till it fell off my body. It was completely wore out. Yeah, I'd probably sell for a lot on eBay, but man, it'd be a cool one to wear, huh? Mario Shasta, huh? Caverns of Mars. I played that for the first time not long ago, courtesy of the Atari 50 collection. Really fun shooter, really groundbreaking, very influential. They've got a ton of prototypes here, which is always very cool. Now, a lot of just people off the street may not care much about these. This is kind of thick in the weeds for hardcore gamers who have seen everything and that find these prototypes for games that some of which never came out and some that did come out. And some of these are available online. You can download the ROM, which is always cool. And yeah, it's really cool that the National Video Game Museum is doing a great job of preserving these rare artifacts. Casey's Crazy Chase prototype, that's cool. It's one of my favorite games of the second generation of consoles. Interactive Rocky Horror Picture Show, that's awesome. One of my favorite showcases here in the museum has these unreleased Parker Brothers game boxes. Incredible Hulk. Would have loved to have seen that game back in the day. Revenge of the Jedi, how cool is that? Wow, awesome stuff. Telegames Personal Arcade, I actually have one of those. The Telegames the DINA for short. I actually got one of these electronic discount sales. I bought quite a few back in the day. Kept a couple and sold a bunch on eBay. Fascinating stuff here at the museum. How many of you guys have seen this GameCube? Awesome. And the Neo Geo. The Japan only Super Game Boy 2. Love Typing of the Dead. How many of you guys have played that game? That is so much fun. And I've told you guys that Mario Teaches Typing taught me how to type the correct way. Didn't learn much in high school with my typing class, but I got really good at it with Mario Teaches Typing. And Typing of the Dead just made me that much better. And if you're a TurboGrafx fan, which I definitely am, this is a great section of the museum. Many of you know the Japanese version is called the PC Engine. And the Turbo Express was TurboGrafx on the go. Awesome. Heritage Auctions recently sold a Halcyon game console, incredibly rare. Luckily, there's another one here at the National Video Game Museum. This section over here, called Checkpoint, focuses on rarities and really high dollar games. So we're gonna get a nice look at some of this stuff in the showcases over here, including some games that you guys know are incredibly rare, really valuable, and highly sought after, including MUSHA, Panic Restaurant, Bonk's Adventure for the NES, Little Sampson, very famous for being rare, Magical Chase. Hardly anybody have heard of Magical Chase until years later after it was released, when it was known to be a rare game. Surprise at Dinosaur Peak, another well-known rarity, and I love that they have these games that are known for being rare all over here in the same showcase. Nintendo World Championships, great card. They don't have a gold card here at the museum. Hopefully they will someday. They do have the Star Fox Super Weekend card though. Pretty cool. And horror fans love these boxes. The games, you know, take them or leave them, but the boxes are amazing. Some really primo N64 and Super Nintendo stuff, including Sculptor's Cut, which was a Blockbuster exclusive. Some really choice Sega CD and Sega Saturn games. Some of the rarest of the rare. Pretty cool. Final Fight Guy. Awesome. There's some history on that game if you want to check it out. And the Punch-Out Famicom Gold, if you want to pause the screen to read about that. Marlboro Edition Lynx. How many smoking-related consoles, branded consoles, do you know of? white Atari 2600. So far, no information has been found on why this was modded into a white case. Ooh, that's neat. Atari Pong carrying case. And only a few of these known to exist. It's the first one I've seen. Yeah, I like that the museum has a nice variety of rarities as well as common stuff. Superman 3, never made that game, but I love that they have the prototype box art here. How many of you guys have seen these walkie-talkies from the Super Mario Brothers movie? And these are actual items used in the film, tools used in the film. A demo VHS there, back there. Incredibly cool. Now, if you have Maximum Carnage sealed, the special edition, you don't know if you have the Genesis or the Super Nintendo version unless you open it up or weigh it. There's a way to tell if you weigh it because the cartridges are a slightly different weight. The Gold Microvision Award, if you want to read about that. Nice, the boxed Blockbuster Championships 2 cart. Awesome. Along with the Donkey Kong competition cart, super rare. I used to see Rob the robot, the robotic operating buddy, in thrift stores all the time back in the day. I never bought one because I didn't want to use it. I'd heard it was terrible for playing, but like an idiot, I didn't buy one. Now it'd look great on display in my gaming room. Now there's an old Nintendo brand Ultra Hand, as seen in Playing with Power, the Nintendo Story documentary. As you guys know, years and years before Nintendo got into video games, they did toys and Hanafuda cards and love hotels and all kinds of enterprises. And the actual model that was used for the cover art for Star Voyager, incredibly cool. Neptune prototype, awesome. Shout out to Adam Koralik. Atari Video Cube, like the Rubik's Cube game. It's just the Sega Justify. How many of you guys are fans of Keith Abacary and watched him videos where he's walking around pointing the Sega Justifier at people? Pretty funny stuff. How many of you guys ate video game cereal back in the day? I remember the Nintendo cereal system, and it seemed like gimmicky cereal was never as good as the real stuff. Like Captain Crunch and Fruity Pebbles and all that stuff was always better than the cartoon cereal or the video game cereal. Did you guys have any favorite video game cereal that you ate back in the day, or cartoon or movie cereal or TV-based cereal? It was usually pretty bad, but if there was some good cereal along those lines, I would love to hear about it. The very rare Coca-Cola Game Gear, if you want to read some history there, and the really bizarre Game Boy Color sewing machine. I know Leonard Herman has one of these. Gaming author Leonard Herman. Across the top of these showcases, they got all these great tabletop ads that would go awesome in any game room, but it's just nice to see them here at the museum. Obviously, these were thrown out in most cases by stores when they were through promoting these items. And so today they're very hard to find. Really colorful, love the artwork. And over here you can play some Atari 2600, some NES, and some Xbox 360, three of the most iconic gaming consoles of all time. And yeah, guys, that about wraps it up. Let me know in the comments if you have ever been to the National Video Game Museum in Frisco, Texas. If you planned to go before and it hadn't worked out, I encourage you to try to check it out. It is definitely worth the trip. If you want to go to the Dallas-Fort Worth area and just make a vacation of it, let me know in the comments what other things do you like to do in this area. I'm a big fan of the Fort Worth Stockyards and the Dallas Farmers Market. And there's a lot of cool arcades and retro gaming stores in the area, and there's great museums as well. So yeah, National Video Game Museum. Let me know in the comments, what'd you see, what'd you think? What'd you think about this place? We'll talk to you guys in another video. Thanks for watching, and thank you for subscribing.